Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Gurren Lagann. I wonder how many of you have heard of it. Yeah, insanely popular series. Yeah, that's how I'm going to introduce this series. I don't really know what else to say, considering how popular it is. So, let's start off with the story. So, what is Gurren Lagann about? Well, the story begins. Basically, we are introduced to these two characters, Simone and Carmina. If you want to know, Simone is the little guy over here, and Carmina is the muscly bound dude over there. And basically, they are living in an underground village. They have to dig to expand the village. And, Simone's kind of fine with that existence, but Carmina is very dissatisfied with that existence. His father, in the past, left to go to the surface and to, explore. And Carmina had the opportunity to go to the surface as well at that point, but he was too afraid to, leave the village and turn back and went back to the village. And ever since then, he has been regretting that enormously. So he, carries out a whole bunch of schemes in order to try to escape the village, and quite often they fail. In fact, they always fail. And it isn't until a mecha, a machine, comes crashing through the ceiling of the underground village, along with a beautiful woman called Yoko, who is the redhead you can see in the cover, comes along trying to defend the village from these, this mecha. They're called gunmen. Earlier, Simone had found a drill while he was digging, and he, Yoko, and Carmina go off to find that there is actually a face, deep within the ground, that of another gunman. And Simone is able to use that drill in order to activate the gunman, and he's able to fight off the other gunman, and they journey to the surface. And that's how the story begins. And I will say the one thing that I really liked about the story more than anything else was its scale. How it opens up with this very kind of isolated community. They're underground, they don't know anything about the surface, or even if the surface exists. The village's population is probably a couple of hundred, and by the end of the series, without going into spoilers, it has, a scope almost infinitely times bigger than, that. So, absolutely loved, the way that the story kept building and becoming far more and more epic. But having said that, there are a couple of flaws in the story. I'll start off with those first. My two biggest gripes with the series. First of all is that after the first 3 episodes, the next 3, episodes 4, 5, and 6, are pretty episodic. And I will say that they are easily the weakest episodes of the entire series. Which is saying something, considering there is a compilation episode halfway through. I just found those episodes very uninteresting and bland. I think they could have been, worked... they do serve a purpose. They introduce key characters that will become far more important later in the series. But I think they could have been handled much, much better. And then my other biggest gripe with the series is that there is a character that is introduced in one of those episodic episodes. A perfectly fine character, for the majority of the series. But then there's a certain, how do I describe this now? I guess I'll just say it. There's a time skip later in the series. And that character changes, completely. Which, in general, I like that. I really hate time skips that, leave characters absolutely identical to the way they were before. But there needs to be an explanation of why they change, and I just found his character change to be too sudden and, not explained well enough, that I just found it very irritating and, awkward. So, yeah, I think that could have been handled enormously better. Besides that, there are a great number of twists and turns in this series, and in particular, the action scenes are absolutely fantastic. That I really have to commend action sequences. Now, when I mentioned twists and turns before, I just simply want to say there are a couple of surprises in this series, which isn't something that, I see too often in action series, so I was very happy with that. Not only that, but there was some very good emotional moments, and the story overall works out pretty well. Like, it's a very inspiring story. I just think there are some, very, very iffy moments. Anyway, getting beyond that. Characters-wise, so we are introduced to our lead characters. Let's start off with Simone. So Simone definitely has an enormous character arc throughout this series. He starts out very whiny, very, cowardly, etc., etc. But over the course of the series, he finds his motivation in order to keep going in his life. He finds the motivation to protect others, the strength to protect others as well. And, overall, his character development is very good. And so I definitely, he works very well as a lead character. Kamina is very dominating, and, particularly near the beginning of the series, I found him, maybe a bit too dominating. Don't get me wrong, he lends the series a great deal of energy, but I do think that he could have been a bit more kind of withdrawn, just to allow Simone, who's our true lead character, to kind of breathe a little better. But Kamina is a perfectly enjoyable character. Yoko is probably the most problematic of our lead three, in that, first of all, I have to give props where props are due. Her character design is absolutely fantastic, and I've seen many people, completely going, bonkers for how sexy and attractive she is. In fact, I happen to know a guy who actually has a hug pillow of her. I know, weird, right? But as a character, she isn't nearly as developed as the others, and I just find her a bit bland, to be honest. Pretty purely there for the whole, fan service, for showing off the boobs, showing off the butt, etc., etc. But she does have a purpose. She definitely assists Simone and Kamina in, exploring the the surface, in helping to give them motivation in order to do battle with their enemies. And she saved their butts a couple of times. I won't say she's a bad character, she's just kind of average. That's what I will say. Like, what really makes her is her character design. Animation-wise, this was done by a little-known studio called Gainax. I really have to stop, little-known, decently popular, etc., etc. Gainax did Neon Genesis Evangelion and Pantheon Stocking and Furikuri and a whole bunch of other really popular series. And Gainax do a really, really good job here with the animation. Character designs are superb. There was a lot of colour. Like, this was one of the most colourful anime series I've seen as of late. And the majority of the series is animated superbly with a great sense of fluidity and momentum. But I must say that among the whole works of Gainax, this has got to be one of their most problematic in terms of quality control. In that some characters, look a bit off every so often. In fact, it's amazing that episode 4 managed to get through quality control at all, because, that episode, if anyone has ever seen it, looks pretty bad. But that's kind of the low point. The animation in general is superb, and it is very recommendable on that front. But I will say that the quality control, it was a bit iffy at points. Now, music-wise, the music in the series is also really, really good. The opening is excellent. The endings are okay. But I must say that my favourite track is actually something that appeared near the end of the series, where it actually combined rap music with a kind of with an opera singer kind of sounding, and a bit of a kind of orchestral music, which, it actually works out really, really well. And there's some great soundtracks throughout the majority of this series. So from a soundtrack perspective, definitely works. Those endings, though, I do find a bit iffy. Just my personal opinion. Now, English voice acting. The dub for this is, in general, excellent. Yuri Yawenthal plays Simone, and Kyle Hebert, I always find that weird because I always want to call her Herbert. Hebert plays Kamina, and Michelle, I always mix up, I think it's Ruff. Michelle Ruff plays Yoko. And they all play their roles excellently. They're also, in fact, the majority of characters, I would say full stop, are played absolutely superbly by their English voice actors and actresses. What I will say is that there are a surprisingly good few lip-syncing mistakes in this dub. The worst of it really was there was a moment at one point in the series where a character was speaking, but his mouth wasn't moving for 2 or 3 seconds, which, was really, really weird. So from that perspective, the English dub was really problematic. Now, Japanese, dubs or soundtracks or whatever you want to call the Japanese performances aren't exactly well known for their superb lip syncing as well. So I'm not exactly sure how much worse the lip syncing is in English than it is in Japanese. But suffice to say, that is a bit distracting. But I can still recommend the English dub, no problem in the series. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So just before I give my kind of final verdict, I would just simply say that in this release from Anime Limited, which is exclusive to Region B, you get a couple of extras. You get the Yoko Goes to Gainax, which is a making of. You get test animation footage. You get textless opening and ending, storyboard music video. Which actually, the storyboard music video was at the end of the compilation episode as well. And actually, they don't mention on the back here, you get the TV broadcast version of episode 6, which is basically a much more cut version of the version that appears in here. Basically, a lot of it is kind of just using clips that was in previous episodes. So basically, I guess you could call the episode 6 that appears on this the extended cut. So yeah, and also the picture quality and the soundtrack are absolutely great. Also, if you ever find yourself in need of it, this actually has a French audio on it. So, maybe it wouldn't be bad for some people who are, trying to learn French, to give it a go. Could be potentially useful. So anyway, overall my verdict for Gurren Lagann. Gurren Lagann, overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very entertaining series with some strong, lead characters, some great animation, strong soundtrack, and an inspiring story. But I will say that there are definitely those moments throughout the story, those episodic episodes, the sudden change in one character in particular, how relatively bland Yoko is in comparison to the other characters, and the quality control in the animation. It all kind of knocks it down a bit for me. But I have no hesitancy to actually recommend this series. It is a very, very good series and something that people should definitely check out. Particularly if you like the other stuff that the director has done, such as Kill la Kill, Pantheon Stalking, etc., etc. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully you enjoyed this review of Gurren Lagann. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.